America's medical system needs healing. Free2Care has real solutions. Our mission is to magnify the voices of the patient and physician. We want to take medicine back to its original purpose. Join host Dr. Nikki Johnson for Free2Care, the podcast, for conversations on lowering prices, making prices transparent, personalizing medical care, taking bureaucrats out of the system to bring you more choices for your healthcare dollar. We know that healthcare is personal, not partisan. Join us live Fridays at 8 p.m. Eastern for Free2Care, the podcast.
All right, welcome back. It's been almost a month since I have been live here on Free2Care, the podcast. So those of you who have been missing, I appreciate you showing up to watch tonight. Tonight I have two guests. We are still doing our introduction to all the Free2Care Coalition members. And if you do not remember, free2care.org, free, the number 2, care.org is our website, and we are an organization that is made up of grassroots physicians and just all kinds of people and patients who are interested in fixing healthcare. And so there are several organizations in our coalition, and I'm introducing you tonight to Physician Outlook Magazine and to HPEC. Two of my favorite people will be here to talk about their roles in Free2Care. But the main thing we're going to talk about tonight is physicians just selling your brand and protecting your identity, all kind of in 1 hour. So we're going to smash it in. I am going to bring on a fellow pediatrician, Dr. Marlene Wust-Smith, who is living in Pennsylvania, but works all over the country. So welcome, my dear.
Thank you. You have a voice made for radio. I love listening to that introduction.
Aw, thanks. Oh, Dr. Christina Dewey, that other pediatrician, told me it sounded like a porno intro. So.
I was going to say that, but I was like, this is rated G for.
I'm going to leave it now for that. For now, we may change the music later. May turn it into a little contest or something like that for us. But all righty. So thank you so much for joining me. I really, really appreciate it. And I've been looking forward to this for a while. And I know it took some coaxing to get you here because you don't like to do live.
No, I do not. I'm getting used to it. I'm getting used to it.
But you are a beautiful person. Your story, all of it needs to be told. But tonight, we're going to take about 25 minutes or so for you to talk to us all about the Physician Outlook magazine. So why don't you get started? Tell everybody just a teeny bit about who you are, what you do, and then start telling us about the magazine.
Great. Well, as you said in your introduction, I'm a fellow pediatrician. I've been a pediatrician now since 1992. Finished my pediatric residency at Cornell, where I did my training, and over the last 3 decades have worked pretty much continuously in different settings. So I've had a very active practice life. I would get dragged into administrative roles from time to time, and my passion is with the patient. So any job that I've ever had to put on an administrative hat, I had to insist that it would also include direct patient care, because that's why I went to medical school. That's why most of us, it's a calling, not a career. And especially when we work with children, we have this unique opportunity to see change in those, the minute a family is born, whether it's their first baby or their 10th, there's this opportunity for change. So it's like a new leaf. So I've always been excited about the prospect of caring directly for patients, but also have been put in unique situations where policy is set and administrative decisions have to be made. And it's, again, been in a variety of settings, county health department working with Medicaid patients. And I stumbled into that one. That was, probably 2 decades ago, because I speak Spanish as my first language, and I wanted to see the Spanish-speaking immigrant population on the east end of Long Island, and could not understand why I wasn't getting paid. I would work at a private practice, got very busy with seeing patients who I could speak to in their native tongue. The practice didn't realize that the yellow Medicaid, New York State Medicaid card was no longer accepted because it had turned into a managed care plan. And so I was being paid a percentage of collections, to find out a year into it that there was 0%, or whatever it was, 40% of 0 is not a good number to have. So that's how I started learning. I contacted the county health department. One thing led to another. And I said, look, we can't fix what's going on. This isn't fair to the pediatricians who are seeing these poor children with a lot of healthcare needs and not getting paid for it. How do I get paid for this? I live here. I want to see these patients. And they're like, well, if you become a medical program administrator for us, and that was at the County Department of Health, we'll let you see patients Mondays and Fridays. So that's how I stumbled into my knowledge of what a Medicaid managed care plan and Child Health Plus and capitation. And because I had just been practicing. I mean, we don't learn in medical school or in residency the business of medicine. So
that's right. I mean, we maybe, get like a few minutes on billing and
it's
starting and coding. That's about it.
And even then, looking back on what we would get, or advocacy, it's the canned version of what someone wants us to know. Yes. So it was probably about a decade ago now. My daughter just turned 21, that she wanted social media. And I was like, oh, hell to the no, not happening, not by yourself. And we compromised and decided to open a Facebook account together that we would share. And she would play some silly games or send silly pictures. I stumbled upon our mutual friend, Dr. Marion Mass, and some other advocates. I started meeting more and more people virtually that were feeling the same way about healthcare that I was feeling. So it, my interest in writing and in publishing what was going on in the world of medicine was born out of what was going on social media, because it certainly wasn't going on in the hospital where I was employed 11, 12 years ago. So it's been a journey, and I decided that my voice is, or my calling now, in addition to continuing to see patients, is to give others a voice and to translate what's going on the grassroots level in advocacy to the print form as well, because I think docs are the last vestige of humanity that still likes to get their journals in the mail, and you'll see them pile up in the corner.
That is so true. I know everybody else has moved on to a completely digital world, no newspapers or anything, but we still like our journals printed out.
And that's kind of where my idea came from, because I'm much older than you, but I cannot find the majority of my medical school classmates or my residency co-graduates on social media. So we're at a weird age. I'm almost 60. We know how to use technology, but the smart ones kind of stay away from the technology, and they come home, especially if they're forced to use it at work. I think they're coming home, putting their feet up, getting their New York Times, and whatever.
And thinking about retirement.
Exactly.
Early. Most people are.
Well, and that's, I think, very different. That's a distressing, not that I don't want people to retire, but I see so many docs retiring way before they would have a generation ago. And while it's important to have downtime and enjoy your family and grandchildren or whatever's to come, most physicians, I think, practiced until they died in their office or couldn't practice anymore. And it's not uncommon to hear, as you know, 30, 40-year-olds, they just finished their fellowship and they're looking for a way out because of what's happening in the bureaucracy and the red tape. And, so something's got to give. We have to talk about it. And that's why I founded this magazine.
Yeah. All right. So so great segue. So tell us the story behind Physician Outlook.
So I am
a really cool story.
It's as everything in my life, a little bit accidental. It's meant to be. I always say God's moving the chess pieces in the sky. So I am from a Latina family, a Hispanic family where we respect our elders. And I was raised by an uncle who's really a father figure to me, who has had a magazine called the Hispanic Outlook on Education for about 3 decades. So about the same time that I've been a doctor, he's had this magazine where they talk about educational issues. And he's getting up there in age. He's almost, he just turned 90. And for the last 5 to 10 years, he's been like, you loved to write when you were little, won't you write for the magazine? And I know he's just looking to leave his legacy to someone. And at that time, I just was like, I'll write for you. Education is not my focus. Medicine is, and it's taken a funny twist because, as you know, and the work you do with the differences in education, we are really talking about education. Medicine is 90% about what's happening now.
Absolutely.
So I've come full circle, but I did tell him that I would start writing, and he gave me a section of his magazine called Health Simplified. So I started writing some health-related articles for Hispanic Outlook on Education, and realized that every time I shared something that was on health within our social media channels, it would it would not go viral, but it was shared and shared again and shared again. And I thought, well, this would be a very kind of neat, why not take that concept of a magazine that he had developed, which was both print and online, and develop it for the physician community, because there's really nothing like it in our worlds. Our county medical societies or state medical societies have probably the most similar type of publication, but I wanted something that was light reading, was educational, was a little edgy, and kind of stuck the finger in places that we weren't supposed to as employed physicians. Or, you're not supposed to question authority anymore. You're supposed to roll over and accept that insurance companies practice medicine, and electronic health records are supposed to be clunky. And I started writing and realized that I think we had something, and developed a business plan. And it was pre-COVID. So one of my mantras was that I did not want to take advertising from pharma, because you can't open, whether it's WebMD, whether it's MD Edge, any of the medical magazines filled with 10-page advertisements. And frankly, as you know, and our listeners know, pharma and the middlemen are part of the problem. I didn't want to be taking blood money from basically from the root causes of our issues. So we set out to have a bunch of travel, luxury items, sunglasses, cool watches, exercise equipment, all these advertisers lined up. And then we launched our first issue in January of 2020. And we all know the history that happened from there. So instead of those very fancy CME and travel advertisers, we actually have developed a very neat model for highlighting physician entrepreneurs and artists. And we pivoted as we needed to, and gave doctors a creative outlet for docs who had not been writing or publishing for decades, the COVID situation brought us together in a common platform. So
that is a great segue into the beautiful cover art that has since won you an award. I mean, can you believe it? I mean, you've only been publishing for just over a year now, and you won an award already. That's so amazing. But tell us a story about the art. I'm going to put up.
One of the
this is the first art. This is the first one.
The
correct?
Very first one was with the eye.
Okay.
It's Dr. Coriel's. I might have one here. That's the one that won our.
That's the one that won the award. Okay.
The award.
Tell me about
picture. So your picture is somewhere in there. So I developed that one. I was very proud of the logo. I wanted something that reminded me of chemistry. One of my favorite mentors is my maternal aunt who passed away, but she was a chemist in Cuba, and I wanted something that reminded me of the periodic table. And so it took me a long time to develop that logo, and then that particular cover is created by thousands and thousands of tiny little pictures of physicians on the front lines and physicians of color and marginalized physicians. I believe that issue came out right after the George Floyd incident, and it really kind of woke me up in a way that I had not really thought about medicine. So I'm just proud of of where we've come. That's not my favorite cover. Actually, the back of that issue is one of my favorites because it's actually Dr. So, who is a dermatologist, creates this really neat art out of food. So bread art. So she has a hand, two pieces of toast intertwined and holding hands. So that's the back cover of there. And she does awesome Play-Doh surgery. She's the Play-Doh surgery doctor. So I just love kind of making us human, putting the human back in medicine is one of our goals at the magazine, and to make accidental activists out of us. So while we're enjoying the pretty pictures and, refinding our own talents, whether it's in writing or poetry, photography, painting, there are going to be articles in there that should stop and make you think about, what you hear on the news and what is actually happening in your world in medicine.
Well, let's go back to the artwork first, though.
Yes.
Where do you get the artwork? I find.
I'm all over Instagram. I have been invited to different physician artist groups. I myself don't have an ounce of artistic talent, but when people realized that I wanted covers that were created by physicians or scientists, I was invited to different physician artist groups, and Instagram is an amazing source of physician art. And then I'll start following one artist and meet others. I'll actually go on Etsy to look for anatomy themed science prints. And usually when you see something so anatomically correct, you hear that they're a physician or there's a physician in their family. So it's that's my favorite part of my job is choosing.
That is so intriguing to me, just because I know physicians who are artists as well, and it just amazes me how many of us actually do have an artistic side to us when we have this scientific and mathematical brain we have, but there that piece that just gives us this human element, I think, but we express it so uniquely, which is one of the things that draws me to your magazine. And as we talk, I'm just gonna pop on like a couple here and there, but I see this is one of my favorites.
This is a radiologist who makes she commissioned these pieces for me. That's one of my favorite sayings, as you know, that do no harm but take no what on the inside.
Yep.
And on the back of that particular issue, she actually created out of real x-rays the name of the magazine, Physician Outlook, and she's a radiologist who just happened to create, I think, an alphabet years ago. And that's Dr. Somerton, how she became known for her art. And what I love about talking to each of these doctors is hearing their practice story as well. The great majority are still actively practicing. And so being able to express that both entrepreneurial side and their creative side, that's the future of medicine. We need to teach our next generation to not lose themselves so much so in their jobs that they want out before.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the part that keeps you in it, that you have to, keep in touch with your spirit and the things that connect you to the rest of life, things that help you meditate and relax. And, exercise is one of those things, but these people are able to express it in their art. This is one last one. I'm gonna show you.
So this one was by far my favorite. I broke my own rule. So the creator of this particular cover is not a physician, but he's a scientist. His name's Dr. Gail McGill, and I fell in love. I think many people saw this cell on their social media feeds somewhere during the COVID pandemic, and it was shared and shared and shared again. And actually, Christina Dewey, our mutual friend, wanted to use this image. She wrote a very powerful article for Physician Outlook. And this is the inside, a representation of the inside of a cell. And so I reached out to Dr. McGill to see if we could use it because it looked like a roadmap. When you look at the mitochondria and there, as deadlines come and go, we ended up using a different picture for Dr. Dewey's article, but Dr. McGill and I engaged in conversation, and I wanted to hear more about what he did. And it's fascinating. He knew from a very early age that he wanted to be a scientist, but he was also an artist and did not want to lose that. And what he has done through several companies that he has formed is use the molecular, so it's Maya software that's used for Hollywood for like Star Wars, Star Trek, all the software they use to create all these effects. He has applied science and data to it, and he will not, or his companies will not put anything together visually that does not match the data. And so it's very different. And he gave us a very simple explanation. When we're, in third grade, fourth grade, when you first hear of a cell and you draw you're drawing a flat piece of paper, you cannot visualize what is actually going on. So he is passionate about, at a very young age, teaching people what is actually going on the cellular level and on, he's actually produced biology. I encourage you, if you have, your girls are young, it's the Apple 7 book series on that he helped to illustrate with Steve Jobs gave him a ton of money to develop this series of textbooks. In the end, he was actually very pleased with the product, but not pleased that only people with Apple have access to it. So he's still trying to find same issues that exist in medicine exist in education. He cannot find anyone who will actually take his work to put it to good use in a way that can be used by all people.
Oh, cool. Well, I will show it to my girls. My sixth grader will randomly just send out a quote that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell.
So she will love that. So that was my favorite interview, because I think it was also neat to talk to a non-physician. And this was also, he was developing the most accurate, if you go into that issue, you can see how the spike protein actually fuses with the membrane, or his representation of it, but based on true data. So it's not like nothing you've ever seen. So it's so cool.
Yes, it is. I have them stacked up next to my chair, so I see them all. All right. Okay. So what is your ultimate goal for the magazine, as we are trying to wrap things up?
So
how has it been received by the physician community, and how are we spreading our message the way that you originally intended?
Yes. As I mentioned before, we had quite a pause with COVID because the goal was to get the actual print magazines. I think we're getting there now with this year, and with strategic partnerships to actually have the print magazine mailed to different doctors' homes. And we're finding that our distribution for every one issue that's mailed to an office, it's distributed amongst physicians
Nice.
in that office, and nurses and the administrators. And that's what I wanted. Is you can always go online and look at it and read it. And now that COVID is allowing magazines in waiting rooms again, hopefully we don't go backwards on that front. We're going to continue to mail these throughout the country to different physicians. I'm kind of stubborn. I don't want to just buy lists of doctors and just mail them. Direct somebody saying to a colleague, saying, take a look at this, read this. A friend of mine wrote an article or wrote a poem or this, that the storytelling that goes from person to person is how I want to see this movement spread. And really the movement is, I think of it as the Reader's Digest of what's going on a grassroots level to help our physician colleagues who are happily or maybe unhappily retired because they can't stand what's going on in medicine. I think if we can get them out of the trenches, this is my vehicle to help do it, to do that.
Yeah, I mean, this is like our, I guess you want to call it, it's sort of therapy for physicians. We can get our voices out on issues that are related to spreading health news, preventive health, caring for the sick, all of the things that we do as physicians. But we can also be advocates for ourselves, but we can teach and show each other how to wind down and how to still capture that joy in medicine. I just think it's fascinating. It's great. I mean, honestly, most of us don't want to just sit around at home reading our scientific journals all the time. That's not our downtime for the most part. Some people, have their routines, and that's what they do in the evenings. But it's not downtime. This is a way to do that, and then still sort of just kind of invigorate yourself. And I've appreciated it. I'm so excited. I still remember that look on your face when you were telling me about it. When we were in Washington, D.C. the last time at the Library of Conference, the very first Free2Care Conference, right? Yes. That was when we were talking about the idea for this. And I remember that look on your face like, I don't know, I'm going to be able to do this. But it's one of the reasons you were one of my favorite people, is because you get something, you have it in your head, you have it in your mind, you see the vision and you execute, and it's just so beautifully done. And so I'm very proud of you. I'm proud to know you. I'm proud to work with you, because beyond even the magazine, you still are a really strong advocate for patients. And it's just amazing to me that how we met over social media after you were just talking about that. The same with Dr. Moss and Dr. Galler, who was on here, Dr. Jackson. We all met on social media, but we're getting it done. And the bulk of us are either family physicians or pediatricians. There's a ton of us that are pediatricians.
I feel an article coming on about why is it that pediatricians. I was so proud of Marion's cartoon. I love that it's somebody has recognized outside of our circle that this little we may not have money. I love the fact that we're doing this without money, that it's a grassroots.
Yep.
I mean, money,
obviously. We need money to make it work.
You need money to make, but we're not, there's no special interest other than the patient. We need to do what's right for our patients. And what I love about the Free2Care Coalition is that it's bipartisan. we have tough discussions. We compromise. I see our future as being a version of some sort of, basic health plan for everyone with the freedom to choose what you do with your healthcare dollars. And
so this is why I always say my favorite line is healthcare, and it's actually on the Free2Care website, that healthcare is personal. It's not partisan. These are the solutions that we have in Free2Care are all aren't partisan. They're common sense. This is what we do. So we're all together. This coalition is made up of all people from all kind of backgrounds and people with multiple political views. We're not just one. So that's what makes us great. But we're getting out a message in a way that I think can transcend to everyone, which is and solutions that we believe in, we all stick behind and support, because we know that they will work. So this is why we're here. This is why I have this show, and why I have you on. So,
and I'm excited to hear. Sometimes we don't catch up with each other. I'm so excited that Leah's coming on, because I honestly, I still don't really understand blockchain, crypto. I'm dabbling in it. I'm still. Like the light bulb went off for me the other day, because I'm experimenting with all these little blockchain wallets and stuff, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, if you learn about different currencies, you get dollars. When she told me years ago, if you could put your own credentials in and refer a friend, you will earn credits or whatever they're going to call the coin. I'm dying to hear where we are, because I know she.
Well, I've actually gotten the opportunity to see the brief product as it's currently still being developed, but it is really advancing right now, and that's what I really wanted to talk to her about, so she can get a bit more support. She's actually supposed to be logging in here.
I'll text her too. Can she log in at the same time I am, or do I have to get off?
No, you don't have to get off. She can get on. So she just we just need her to pull in. Hopefully she's not too busy and nothing's going on, because that happens. I know.
Yes.
That has happened.
I just hope we can get
busy doctors.
More and more physicians. When we first spoke, and again, it's probably 5-6 years ago, it would be so amazing if we could get the majority. I remember at the time there were 850,000 or so licensed physicians. Just having people sign on to put their credentials into HPEC would have power beyond what could be imaginable, and not power that can be misused. It's just your identity. But then we would be able to really talk about things, new proposed dosages and, pediatric sedation. You could say, what do you think about this? And actually use your individual identity to give your own opinion. It has such power that I just hope that we can see this before all the big, the AMA and all the others.
Start to pack onto it. But I think the concept of it is excellent. So, even if I don't get to chat with her this evening, we will still get it out here. So,
yes.
It looks awesome. It's going to be not only, it's another. To me, I think it's going to be a much better form of what Doximity is right now, for the non-physicians who are watching and listening in. Doximity is almost like a link. It's a LinkedIn for physician community, but it also has some non-physicians included in the community as well. This one would just be for physicians, students, and we'd be able to hold on to our own credentials. And Dr. Houston's story is very unique and interesting, and I wanted you guys to hear that too whenever she comes on. So we'll hang out here and wait for her to come on. So let's talk about, let's go back to the pediatrician thing again. So tell me about what you're doing now with your practice, and what your goal is for practice.
So for practice, I want to remain an independent physician so I can serve my patients without an overlord to, whether that's an insurance company or an administrator telling me one thing and then not giving me the tools to care for people properly. And to give some context, I live in a very rural part of Pennsylvania, was recruited here 16 years ago in 2006. The best paid pediatrician probably in the country, honestly, because they couldn't get pediatricians here. And I loved my job, loved it, until electronic health records came around. And not only was I expected to take care of very complicated, socially complicated, physically complicated patients and families, but what I found is that all the rules that are being put in place give lip service to true care. So long story short is I practice now. I feel like I cannot be employed full-time by any hospital system because I disagree so vehemently with the way that money flows, and the excessive personnel between a patient, the physician. There's 10 support people for every one physician. And just get out of my way and let me practice. Or if you're really going to have social work services, have them be in the room with me, because me having to write a 10-page note to explain it to a social worker that has a 3-week waiting list is not helping my patient. So that's the kind of stuff. And I'm so looking forward to having other conversations in this forum about what is the future of healthcare. Primary care is so undervalued. But the solution isn't to take money away from surgeons or from other, entities, because that's not going to fly. You're going to see all sorts of infighting. How is that money going to be distributed? And how do we make our patients also realize that they have a strong, probably the strongest role in maintaining their health? But it's going to take.
So what you're talking about, the model that you're talking about is very much like direct primary care.
Yes.
How we've seen a lot of family physicians run direct primary care practices or internal medicine, pediatrics combined. But a lot of us, as you mentioned earlier, a lot of us in pediatrics, especially in the large urban areas and the really rural areas, our patient populations dependent on Medicaid. So how do you foresee doing direct primary care with that type of a population? Right. Or how do we convince?
I'm hoping people that we figure out a way to, by having, coalitions like ours. I see our future as having health savings accounts and maybe overfund the poor and the marginalized and those that are from very poor zip codes. If one child from a not disadvantaged family gets $1,000 at birth or a year, maybe a family that's been generationally not blessed with good health or good outcomes, they get 10,000 or whatever. Let the politicians fight it out, but have that money sit in that patient's health savings account. And at the same time, teach people how to use that. You could use that for any qualified health expense. It could even potentially solve, this is a very controversial issue, but it could even solve the whether abortions are covered or not covered, or
it's your dollar.
It's your dollars.
It's your
you decide,
money.
And you could see
what to do with it.
I could see a future where one state may not allow any terminations of pregnancy because their legislature and their people vote against it. But if someone needs one for medical purposes and has to cross state lines, they'll have the money to do that in their health savings. So it's about choice. It's about price transparency. And really, right now, I cannot practice how I want to practice because my poor patients do not have, I'm not going to accept pennies for very complex care. I'm not going to be able to afford immunizations if I were to open a direct primary care. So what I can offer is developmental consults, anxiety consults. Right now I'm trying to talk to families about nutrition during the summers, during the school year. As you know, probably my bill paying role is to work at a small university with 18 to 25-year-olds, which they're big kids. They're not. It's not much different than being a pediatrician in general. So, especially a 3-year-old, 18, 19-year-old boy becomes a 3-year-old when they don't feel well. It's the cutest. They need a maternal doctorly, you're going to be okay.
That is very true. This is scientific data-based people. This isn't just
it is
conjecture and opinion. But so all of the things that you expressed are very much the themes of things that we want to fix in Free2Care.
Yes.
Transparency is huge. Transparency is a huge one. Once people actually know what the costs of medical care are, that will change. I just think that is going to transform our healthcare system, because if they know that they can actually get it for much cheaper than what they are actually paying or even contracting a third-party payer to cover in a health plan, I think that's going to change our game. So that is humongous. So I was very pleased to see that the Biden administration did continue to support the President Trump administration's HHS rule to require hospitals to have transparency. So that's just one start. We're working on exposing the pharmacy benefit managers and the supply chain with the group purchasing organizations too. And I think once people figure that out, how much their prescription drugs can cost, I mean, all of it. I mean, it's going to be, I think we will really transform medicine. Those are the big things that we need to do. And then, here and there, those pieces that you said are burdens, those regulatory burdens, like electronic health record is huge. We just, my practice, not everybody here knows that I'm trained in pediatric intensive care medicine, but my main practice is right now in pediatric procedural sedation, which means that I function like an anesthesiologist does outside of the OR. And I'm the medical director for our center at the hospital that I work at. We just went live on electronic medical records now 3.5 weeks ago. The reason why it took so long was because I really advocated for us, for the hospital to create a system that was actually going to work the best possible way with our workflow. Of course, I didn't get everything I wanted because I'm not a big administrator. I don't hold the purse strings, but I got some things tailored to help us out. But it has given me the biggest headache, my shoulders have been so tight over these last 3 weeks to a month. I mean, it has been a huge burden on my mental health and even physical well-being, to tell you the truth. It has really changed how we take care of our patients. Our eyes are on computers and iPads. I have more mature and experienced nurses who work with me who aren't that great, with technology, period. But they do use the computer for certain things, but to use it all day long on patient care, it's stressful to them. They don't want to make a mistake. So it is a huge change in how they practice.
And what I see, because I travel as a pediatric hospitalist, I'm terrible at not answering questions. I get off on tangents, but okay. I work not 9 months out of the year at a university. My summers, weekends, and holidays, I travel and do pediatric hospitalist work, and I do telemedicine. So I have seen every electronic health record known to mankind, and I contend they actually make care more dangerous.
Yeah, yes. I can tell you that I have made so many entry errors in the last few weeks. I mean, more than I've ever done in my career. Just writing down forgetting a decimal point for the child's weight And we base our medications on weight.
Right.
So if I forget that decimal point, the way I'm putting it in the iPad, or like the iPad doesn't
Right.
detect it, you can make a
It's
kid
huge. And what they
twice as big. And
all of these systems take away your critical thinking skills, and it's by design. And so we're going to have a generation of younger nurses, younger doctors who've never really been taught to critically think. This generation, looks everything up. It doesn't read textbooks, is given an abstract, and now you're handing them a machine that does their algorithms for them, and they're not very well developed. Again, I think by design. I think there's a nefarious, we're going to find out in the next few years. I don't even want to tackle this. Why are electronic health systems as clunky as they are? When we live in an age where, our kids can play a video game that is so elaborate and mistake proof, and there's something fishy in this whole thing, and it's got to do with money. We're going to have to follow.
Yeah. I mean, I can't even, not even thinking that far with it.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at what the utility of it is only for data collection and data analysis. I mean, that part of my job is so much easier now that everything's electronic. Because I can go in and analyze our work data and look at everybody's charts and see if everybody billed correctly or they did their chart completion appropriately. I can do that. That makes it easier rather than going to chase down papers. And then I can just pull up a spreadsheet and create a pivot table right then and there, and I'm analyzing data. Fantastic. That's great for me. It's going to save me time. However, it's making my patient care time a lot longer when I'm actually not even doing the patient care. I'm just entering stuff into a computer or an iPad and mixing patients up. I've done that too. Like it is.
And I think that it's bringing the divide between physicians and nurses, I've noticed, further and further, because the nurses at all of the hospitals I've worked are 40 to 50% of their time is data entry. You can no longer just find a note. Like in the old days, I could read, how was my patient overnight? If I couldn't track down the nurse, there was always an entry. This is all, skin intact, respiratory rate, fine. It's check in 100 different places.
Maybe a comment here, but there's no narrative. There's no narrative about what events happen overnight and that kind of thing. It is you have to go in and put all the pieces together yourself. It is a lot of work. And then you're clicking through page after page. It's not that it's all on one page for you. I mean, you can look at a summary of trends and vital signs and lab data, but to tell you the whole entire story, you have to click through 10 different screens to figure it all out and still go see the patient.
Right. And try to keep them straight. No, I just came from Tennessee, where they have 2 different electronic health records, and thank God a paper chart still, because it was in the paper chart that I could abstract the information I really needed. And an nurse administrator walked in a suit the one morning that I was there. How's everything going? I said, this is a patient safety issue you guys have going on here. And he told me it costs $100 million to get the most popular electronic health records. I don't want to name names. And that at his last hospital, they were able to get a grant so that it would cost $40 million. That's highway robbery. It's the same exact system. It's plug and play. They create all this fat and excess cost when there's really no reason. Each hospital should be able to customize their templates. Yes. I think this is where I think this is nefarious. Yes. They do not want the small hospital to survive. There is a big plan in place to force small independent facilities to say, forget this, we can't afford this anymore. We're going to have to go with the bigger hospital to afford the good health system. a health
I mean,
vendor.
it is insane. And then of course, yes, then they go and buy up the community hospital after that, and then
Mm-hmm.
put their system across the board.
Mm-hmm.
But we're also doing it. We're merging pediatric stuff data with adult data. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it is it's just really scary. And
Yeah.
so, this kind of goes back to what you're saying about why you're the pediatrician you are, and you're not working for like a major organization, because just because of all of these things that make doing our jobs, doing the career that we set out to do, and caring for people and caring for our patients, it makes it so much harder and
Mm-hmm.
just so stressful. And it does not have to be that way. So that's why we're here. That's why we're
Mm-hmm.
telling our stories. That's why we're free to care. And so it looks like, I don't know, Leah maybe
Yeah,
got
Leah
busy.
must not. She did
So
not
we'll touch
answer
base with
my
her
text.
another time. We have plenty of Fridays in this
Yes. Yes. Yes.
in the year. Leah will be able to join me at a different time, but we could talk, as we
All night.
always do, all
Yeah.
night long about any and all of this stuff. But let's just going back to our themes of taking care of each other, taking care of ourselves, taking care to be able to take care of our patients. But how do we do that? How do we fix this broken system? Is transparency in everything, transparency in hospital pricing, transparency in medication pricing, device care, and then getting all of those middlemen and all of these big elephants that are in the room that are
Mm-hmm.
standing in between us and our patients. And the free2care.org website has a fantastic cartoon. And I think it's the Twitter page also has a fantastic cartoon of all the people who stand in the middle between you and your doctor. And that is what we're trying to do, is to move all of those pieces out in Free to Care. And Physician Outlook magazine, please subscribe. The website is on the screen. It's www.physicianoutlook.com. Dr. Marlene Wust-Smith is my friend and fellow pediatrician warrior, is the editor-in-chief and and everything of the magazine. Anybody who has content can write and contribute.
Yes,
I've contributed a couple of pieces already, and it's pretty easy to do. It's much easier than submitting to big newspapers
yes.
too. But anything else? Any final thoughts? Any positive notes you want to leave with this evening?
So just like you just said, Nikki, to take care of ourselves, take care of each other, take care of our families, and really be kind to one another, and encourage anyone who's not part of Free to Care, patients. You can be an individual physician or part of a larger group. It's just a nice place with just good discussions, and solution based. We don't just talk about the problems. We offer solutions and compromises, and I think that's where it's at.
Awesome. Thank you again for joining me this evening. And you guys, thank you for I saw a few of you popping in and out throughout the show. We didn't have any questions this evening, but if you want to send some later, just post them on the YouTube channel or libretv.co or our Facebook page, which is Free to Care, the podcast. That's the name of the page on Facebook. It's also the name of the page on YouTube. And our website, Free to Care, free, FREET, the number 2, .org. Those of you who are interested in the conference, we have a conference coming up, a live in-person conference coming up in the middle of September in Austin, Texas. So it'll be great to see you there. If you have not gotten your tickets and reserved, there's limited space. So please go ahead and sign up. It's an Eventbrite registration, but if you go to the website, you will be able to find that. And I think that's all the announcements I have. I just want you guys to have a wonderful weekend. And remember, healthcare is personal, not partisan. Good night.
Good night. Thanks.